Nichole, you're a professional photographer,
I am.
and you're someone who specializes in visuals, specializes in making sure that you're telling a story, through
Mhm.
images.
Yeah.
And I can relate. I did photography in college, and I was like, it's freezing that moment in time, and for all eternity, and you're telling that story.
Yep.
Um, how do you do that? How do you tell stories through pictures?
That's a great question. So I think of it in multiple elements. So
Okay.
the story starts kind of before we even get to the camera, at least with what I do. And you knew
Hmm.
this a little bit from some of our photography we did together. But I think it's about learning who the person is.
Hmm.
So whether you're doing a self portrait, it's like identifying your own identity and observing that and like what you want to capture. I think it's like taking a step back first and saying, okay, like what is it? Like what am I capturing? What story am I telling? And then going out and doing that. At least that's what I do a lot in my work now.
Hmm.
Especially because everything I do has a plan before it. I'll be honest, maybe before this, it was a little more whimsical. It was a little less strategic. Like just going out, I would just go and take a photo walk around the city and see what captured my eye. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. The world of photography is huge. So you can
Yeah.
look at the way you frame a subject, you can look at the lighting, you can look at the location, you look
Hmm.
at the style a person is wearing. All of that tells a story. It all has elements. So whether you want to set a mood of like energy and excitement, or do you want to set a mood of like more somber and more calm, or
Hmm.
more bright and airy, or more energetic and powerful? It's like they all kind of say a different thing. And like the location, the lighting, the style, all of that goes into it. Right. So
Yeah.
that's how you kind of start to tell the story. It's like you kind of are looking at all of the elements. And then from there, you start to capture. So it's kind of hard to explain, just like uh, essentially, stepping back from it. Like if I were just walking down the street and taking a picture, but like if you're strategic about it, you can, especially for personal branding in that sense,
Yeah.
it's very it becomes more easy to do when you break it down into those elements. Does that make sense?
So, what would you say to someone who is, maybe has been in business for a little while, or maybe they're starting out? Why would I bother taking pictures? Like, I'll just have my wife take a picture of me, in a suit on my iPhone. Like,
Okay.
you, know, uh, how do you justify? I don't want to say justify, but how do you bring the value of what you can do from a business sense? Like, how does having something that you do professionally with a well thought out visual, how does that separate one business from another?
So I think we have to take it almost like a step back. So I think there's a distinction with everything you're doing, everything you're putting out into the world. So photos are just one part of everything you're putting out into the world about your brand and who you are in your business. So it's almost like saying, okay, what is it? What is the message I want to send about Hypergrowth project? What is the message I want to send about Nichole Howard photography? What is the message I want to send about Tesla? What is the message I want to send about Patagonia?
Hmm.
And then saying, okay, what is going to meet that message? Is a selfie of myself in my office going to send the message of what I want my clients to think of who I am and my brand and my values? The answer could be yes. The answer could be
Yeah.
yes, but the answer could also be no, right? So it's taking a step back and saying to yourself, okay, what is the identity that I really want my brand to have?
Hmm.
And then making a strategic decision from there to make an investment to then hire somebody who can help you create visuals that will support that. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the distinction. And there's all different levels of that. So you could start, and there's all different types of photographers. And so, I take that into consideration. There's a lot of people out there, but that's kind of where you would start, is like, what is my brand identity? Who do I want to be? And what's going to represent that best? What's going to best
Hmm.
tell that story, right? Is it going to be an iPhoto, or is it going to be a high quality, like well thought out, well organized photo of me by a professional who understands how to frame it, how to light it appropriately, who
Mhm.
understands it, because literally photography is drawing with light. That's the Greek name, or like the naming behind it. So not everybody can do that, right? Like, I know I ask Andy, he's my boyfriend, to be like, take a picture. I have to guide him so much through that process. And by the end, he's usually frustrated. He's like, babe, just one photo. I'm like, but another, can you do one more? So thinking about that too. It's like, who's doing it? What's the process going to be like? How's it going to feel? So does that help answer that a little bit more? Like, give a little more
Yeah,
insight into why you might want to invest in personal branding photography. It's like you want to think about who
yeah,
your identity is first. What
for
do you
sure.
think?
I think that's a crucial part, and that was part of my conversation with Hillary in my first episode.
Yeah.
Is really understanding who you are and who you want your audience to see you as,
Yes.
and that story is going to start with the photos that you have, especially on platform like LinkedIn. They're going to
Mhm.
see and so if it's a photo like this from sitting in your car, that's not very professional. A lot of people have that, shockingly, but um, the I think it's important that you actually take the time to think about who are you and who
Mhm.
do you want to be perceived as? How do
Mhm.
you want your business to be perceived?
Mhm.
And so from that respect, working with someone like you who understands how to tell those stories, I think is really important. It plays a crucial role in how you're able to go to market. And in real estate, it's all about location, right?
Mhm.
Well, now, especially in with social media, it's all about the perception.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If the your target audience perceives you as unprofessional or doesn't perceive you as someone capable of doing what they need, you want to make sure that from the first introduction, the visuals you have
Yes.
are going to convey to them, I'm capable, I am experienced, I'm
Or
professional, I'm going to
trustworthy,
deliver, I'm trustworthy.
I'm
Yes,
credible.
absolutely.
Yes.
So I think that's absolutely critical.
Yes. And that's really the purpose. That's really the
Hmm.
purpose of them. And it's interesting, I think a lot about the difference between what a brand is and a personal brand,
Hmm.
and the essential overall feeling, and you probably talked about this with Hillary, is like a brand is like the sum of parts. It's everything you feel about a person or a business when you hear the name.
Hmm.
Everything, right? So when you say Seth Tilley, it's like, how do I feel about Seth Tilley? And whether or not we like it or not, we all have a personal brand, every
Hmm.
single one of us. But we have the ability to control that personal brand and be intentional with that personal brand. And that's one thing I think that's a very, very powerful tool people leave on the table. And that is where you're saying with like visuals, for example, personal brand visuals, you can take some of that power of intentionality back and say, okay, this is what I want to push out into the world. This is the image I want to give to the world of who I am. Like, maybe I'm not
Hmm.
even quite there yet, and that's okay, but this is who I am. This is who I'm becoming. This is the story I want to tell. And so that is extremely, extremely powerful. And it's something that we all have available to us at
Hmm.
any time. And there's actually interesting research that shows, not as much with the earlier generation, I'm sorry, boomer generations, Gen X, I guess you'd say, but with millennials and Gen Z, having a personal brand is really, really becoming very, very important. And it's not just about being popular. It's not about being famous. It's not about being an influencer. It's not about that. It's literally
Hmm.
me knowing, hey, I know you and I can trust you and I know what you're about. And that influences my purchasing power. And so
Yeah.
influences who I want to buy from, excuse me. And then it influences you as the business owner, like who's going to buy from you. So
Hmm.
that's been really interesting. There's a brand builder study. I can send it to you after this. They did this in like 2021, and that was one of their major
Yeah.
findings.
I'll link it to the
Yeah,
video as well.
really fascinating.
Okay.
So yeah,
Great.
it's definitely a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can say that, like, can you get into more detail on what you just said, the
Mhm.
that difference between a brand and a personal brand?
Oh yeah. So a
Yeah.
lot of times it gets confused because they're a little inextricably linked. So I'm going to give an example. So a brand is Patagonia. a brand is Tesla. A personal brand, right, is so essentially everything you think, like all the images, all of the news articles, all of everything you would ever think about Tesla and that feeling that gives you, that is their brand. It's very, what would be some words you would think about when you say Tesla? Like, I know you have
Um,
one, so maybe
maybe sustainability, electric cars, solar, battery, power source. And I also, I've used or I've reviewed Tesla in like case studies in the past, so like I have a little bit more info
That's
than
okay.
typical, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking.
I love it. What about if I said Patagonia?
Um, So I think honestly, the first visual that comes to my head is actually Patagonia because I used to be a snowboarder. But it's the clothing, ethically made clothing with a strong company culture.
And sustainability being at the
And
crux
yeah,
of all
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But it's interesting, right? Because Tesla's sustainability and Patagonia's sustainability are branded in very different ways.
hmm
Like, and that is the distinction, right? That is where it starts right there. The feeling you get when you think about each of those. But then with personal branding, and it's going to be interesting. So Yvon Schoenhardt is the founder of Patagonia. As you may have heard, he recently gave up his billionaire status to be basically to a organization that's going to help preserve like I forget what they called it, like land that needs to be is like underdeveloped. There it is.
Okay.
Underdeveloped land. And so he gave up his billionaire status and everything's going to this nonprofit now. And and he's also like a rock climber, he was a snowboarder, he was all the things, right? So his personal brand, right, definitely influences Patagonia and his business and those values, but those are two very different things. Who he
hmm
is very separate from Patagonia. Now Elon Musk, for example, with Tesla, so he has a very different personal brand. Still, again, thinking about sustainability, but I don't think of Elon Musk and I think of the same vibe or energy that
Not at
Yvonne has.
all. Yeah.
Very different. Very different. So the interesting thing about that though is because your perceptions and your personal brand can influence your business, right?
hmm
So like who you are influences what people think about your business and the values and the culture and who you can hire and who you can't hire because who wants to work with you, right? Based upon who you
hmm
are.
hmm
So those I think is the distinction is with the brand, it's very much the business part, the personal brand, it's to do with the person,
hmm
very much the person, and they're very distinct, but they are different, very different, because one has to do with who I am, what are my values, what matters to me, am I relatable? Like, do you want
hmm
to know me? Or maybe like sometimes with personal branding, like, yeah, you may turn some people away from you, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be for everybody.
Yeah.
But with, and then with the business brand, similar too. Like if your values don't align, like people might not want to buy from you. And that's okay too. I think of Sheen, right? At the clothing company. There
hmm
are some people who are like, cool, value, love it, thank you. Give me that $10 t-shirt. I'm here for it. And there are people who are like, oh my gosh, they treat their workers terribly. I want nothing to do with that company.
Yeah.
Right? So that's all
Yeah.
goes into branding. But it's all related. It's all kind of inextricably kind of linked a little bit. But with the personal part, the really big difference is it really is about who you are, what you like, if you're relatable, if you're credible, and if you're trustworthy, like all of that piece of it, which is
hmm
a little bit separate from some of the business stuff because you don't really think about like a Nike as a person. You don't think of a Tesla as a person. It's just a little bit different. It's more of a corporation. So you kind of tend to frame it differently.
How do you use those visuals? How do you make the most impact with them and really drive home what you've spent so much time identifying your brand as?
Love it. So there are multiple places. I'll also send you my brand consistency checklist and you can link it out. So basically, there are over 27 places that I've collected over the last 5 years that I've used and my clients have used to share, to use as basically a medium in which to share their images. Some of
hmm
it's social places like LinkedIn, some of it's, Instagram, the obvious ones, Facebook. When people are redoing their website, they usually come to me because they like, I need new images. That's like
Yeah.
they're like almost synonymous with one another, but there's so many other places you really could be using them. A great example of this is for very early business owners, and they have their PayPal, and they have their Venmo, and they have
Hmm.
their Honeybook, and they have their QuickBooks, and they don't have an image of themselves there. They maybe have nothing there at all, or they have like a picture of a leaf or something funny. You never want to create an opportunity for somebody to be hesitant about paying you as a business
Yeah.
owner. That
Yeah.
is a great opportunity to use your headshot consistently across all those places. So you're like, oh, this is it. I'm paying Nichole. I'm paying Seth. I'm making sure that this is set up correctly and I don't have any hesitation here. So yeah, so there's like over 27 places that you can use it. There's even more than the list is constantly growing.
Hmm.
And I also have a guide I can share too, which is like the best way to use your photos across each medium because each one's
Okay.
different. Like using a horizontal photo in a blog post is more supportive than using a vertical photo, whereas using a vertical photo in social is better than using a horizontal photo. You just take up more
Yeah.
space in the feed, so you basically have, yeah, everybody wants more space there. So makes
Yeah.
sense.
And I think that that's a good point is on your website, making sure that you have those, not just, oh, I have a photo. It's like you have a specific tailored photo for that use case on your website.
Exactly.
Um, and
Exactly.
especially you mentioned orientation, like you have to consider that portrait landscape one way or the other. Does it fit the space really well? That's going to be
Exactly.
important.
Do you want negative space in your photo so that you can do
Yeah.
a text overlay?
Hmm.
There's some really interesting research Vanessa Van Edwards did on cues. So there's verbal cues and nonverbal cues, and in images, you can use nonverbal cues to your benefit
Yeah.
and direct the viewer based on the nonverbal cues of the picture on your website. So if you have a photo of you pointing and looking up and you're directing the eye to words you want people to see on the website, right? So that's another way of doing it, but also personalizing it. So it's not like a stock image of somebody laughing in the background or sitting at a corporate desk. It actually feels like it's you who's talking to me in the website and also saying, hey, this is something that's important that you might want to know.
Hmm.
And it actually, they've shown that it increases conversion rates and like lead generation through that. Just simple shifts like
That's
that.
really good to know. Okay, so
Mhm.
just making sure that you utilize the imaging correctly is you can see a higher
Mhm.
conversion rate. And
Exactly.
that, as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned, that's all you need right there.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
a couple of basic ideas that one is going to make everything, your site, your company, your branding look better. It's also going to help with better conversion.
Yeah, and efficiency, right. So
Hmm.
you wanna buy something that's gonna work for you and you wanna be efficient in how you use it. And sometimes it's just knowing those little things that can make a big difference. I mean, I
Yeah,
know you know that through Hypergrowth Project and all you do. So it's all about process
absolutely.
mapping and how things function.
Yeah. It's making things efficient. You know,
Mhm.
you I actually wrote a blog post about software, and it's like there's a ton of business software out there now.
Mhm.
And it's like every little thing, there's 5, 6, 7, 20 companies that say they have the best solution for it. And so it's like you're supposed to build this gigantic tech stack of 50, 100, 200, $1,000 a user per month, and all of a sudden it starts to add up to this ridiculous thing. And but do you really need it? It's
Yeah.
like, do you need a Swiss Army knife or do you just need a pair of scissors? Because
Yes.
I could buy a pair of scissors for 3.99. I could, instead of buying a $50 Swiss Army knife. So it's like, start to consider that part of it as well. It's like, what are your needs? Make sure that you're going through and getting the things that meet what you need for your business.
And I think that's such a good point because I think too, some people don't need hundreds of photos. Some people just need a few, and that's
Hmm.
okay too. It doesn't necessarily need to be that maybe you don't want to be on social media. Maybe that's not supportive to you. That's
Hmm.
okay too. You don't
If your
you
target audience isn't on social media, why would you do that?
Why would you do that? Why
Yeah.
would you do that? I mean, more and more of the generation, like the shift is going that way. But I mean, you also don't need to have as much of a presence. Maybe you just have a page with some posts. So if
Hmm.
people happen to go there, oh, okay, they exist here, right?
Yeah.
That's helpful. But that doesn't necessarily have to be your main medium. Maybe email marketing is way more effective for you.
Hmm.
So that's what you do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're right. Like the general movement of the market is to social platforms. The majority of people are on them, but your target audience might not be on that. They might prefer email marketing. They
Mhm.
might prefer direct mail.
Right.
One of my clients, that was their business, was direct mail, and they were doing very well
Amazing.
because
That is amazing for me to hear.
well, so to your point about the generations, um, the yennials, I don't know, whatever, the younger generations,
The younger
um,
we'll just make it a word. It's fine.
yeah, they they prefer something tangible. So the idea of getting something in the mail is novel for them, and
Mhm.
so it starts to have a little bit more impact, which is interesting because that's very much the digital generations, but that's what you need to consider. How does my target audience want to be talked to? How do they want to get my
Exactly.
message?
The medium is the
And
message.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And your imaging could be catered to direct mail. Make it look
Absolutely.
really great on a postcard, and that's
And
fine.
that's actually something, I mean, if you're print for sure, having higher quality images is definitely going to help you in a print scenario over like an
Mhm.
iPhone quality image at this point. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
definitely a huge supportive thing for imagery for sure. Like,
And I
oh,
think that applies to every business. It doesn't matter how small or big you are.
mhm.
It's not this like ridiculous monetary investment
Mm.
to get a handful of really good photos.
No,
And
it's really not.
it's something that for me is not only a no-brainer, but it's almost a requirement. Like you need to make sure that you're well represented, and the way you do so looks good. It doesn't look cheap, because if you
Exactly.
represent your business and you represent yourself with something cheap, well, what is that saying? You
Exactly. It
know?
goes back to your identity and who you
Yeah.
are and what
Yeah.
you want to be and the image you're putting out there. There have been decades of studies. I mean, your brand is your reputation.
Hmm.
That is just another word for it in a way. And personal branding and branding in general is your reputation monetized.
Hmm.
So essentially, you can build a reputation and show people this is who I am. This is, what I'm about. This matters to me. And like you can set that tone through these images and through visuals and through what you say and what you
Hmm.
do and all of that too. And so, it's also offline as well. It's not all online. I like to think about the big picture too. But I
Yeah.
know we're talking about pictures, but big picture. I don't know if people can see my hand motions in this.
I don't know what to do with my
I don't
hands.
know what to do with it. It's the Will Ferrell style. But I just got off track with all of that. But I think it's really important to remember that, your reputation is built over time. So every decision you make will then impact whatever that reputation you're building.
Yeah.
And that's going to be like, again, it impacts so much more than just, it's really your whole bottom line. So it's the suppliers you work with, it's the vendors that you work with, it's the collaborations you get, it's the people who you hire, it's the
Hmm.
clients you get, it's the projects and opportunities that come to you. So it's so much more than just, okay, like, did I sign this client today? It's really the whole picture of, okay, this is what my brand is saying. It's what's building this reputation about me and who I am and what
Hmm.
people are going to look to and trust over time. So having the pictures helps set that tone, and then doing all the other important engagement activities continue to support that over time. But it's a great foundational layer for sure.
So what would you say to someone that is like, well, I'll just get AI to do my headshots?
I know that's definitely hey, look, as somebody who, if you're somebody who, look, if you are 8 years in, you got one headshot 8 years ago, and you're like, look, I want to try the lazy man's version of this, go for it. Go for it. I'm not here to stop you, but I will say this: there are biases in AI. AI is built off data sets.
Hmm.
And so you're still going to see this undertone and bias in AI, and they usually do not look authentic and real.
Hmm.
And your headshot is your first opportunity for you to show somebody, hey, this is who I am, right? And again, build that trust and credibility. If you don't believe in who you are, and part of that is believing in what you look like and how you're representing yourself, what message is that really going to give?
Hmm.
So, of course, AI, maybe it's fast, cheap, and easy. Go for it. But if you really want to build like a relationships with the people and the who are engaging with your content, you might want to think about something that's a little more authentic.
Unless you own the company that does that, then sure, you're
Yeah.
representing your
If you
product.
own an AI company, have an AI headshot. Go for it all day. That's what I said. There might be reasons for it, but I
Yeah.
think it's just it goes back to your identity and what your goals are and who you want to be and how you want to place yourself in the market.
Mhm.
It goes back to all of that. And I mean there are some dangers of it too. You might come out with an extra hand. The third eye, who knows?
That wouldn't work out well.
No, that would not be the vibe. That would not be your brand. You're like, "Okay, that was not what I wanted with my AI headshot."
No.
And I think too, there's definitely always benefits and drawbacks to new technology as it comes out, and I think
Mhm.
AI is still very new. But I also would be remiss if I didn't talk about too, like, just like AI does reflect our own racial and gender biases back at us, and so we have to be really careful that the images aren't representing like maybe a thinner,
Mm.
blonder, lighter skinned version of us, right? So we have to be really careful about that too.
That's
So
good. That's good to keep in mind in using that kind of software for sure.
yeah. So
Well, Nicole, I mean, this was, I think, extremely valuable. All the information. I guarantee that majority of people that are going to watch this, like, I never thought that photography had all these nuances to it when it comes to business, and it really does. And it can have
yeah,
such a positive or negative impact on what you do, and um, the amount and the type of business that you're able to obtain because of the identity that you put out in the world with those visuals.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to do it. I love helping tell people stories. So I'm just grateful that I get to do this every day. And it's really exciting. It's a really powerful thing you can do is to be intentional about who you are in the world and getting really clear about that and then just building a reputation on it too. So it's like thank you.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you appreciate it as well. And I hope if anybody has questions or they're like, hey, I'm curious more about this or how this could work for me, I'm happy to answer any questions. So
Awesome.